Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Psychic medium Helene Olsen and paranormal researcher Patricia Baker. Here are Supernatural Girls.
Everyone, and thank you for joining us for another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls. Today is August 10th, 2013, and we're doing another exciting episode, and tonight we have a fabulous author on the air with us. And good evening to you, my fabulous partner, Patricia Baker.
Good evening, Helene. This is going to be a great show. Can't wait to bring Robert on.
It is. Patricia, I have a question for you.
What is that?
Where does the time go? I just feel like we just did a show, like, I don't know, yesterday.
It's true. And it also feels to me like sometimes we haven't been on the air for weeks. It's a very strange thing that's happening with time, isn't it?
It
really
is.
Very mysterious.
Mm-hmm. My mother informs me it's just because I got old, but I don't think that's all of it.
It's interesting. I used to think that, but then I asked some younger people, people who are under 20, and they all said the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we can just attribute it to our advanced ages anymore. I think it's much more than
it feels it also varies, like you said. Sometimes it seems to go very slow or as though we missed something, and other times it seems so sped up that it's unbelievable.
It is. There's so much going on. My head is actually spinning because there's so much going on in the world. There's so much going on with Supernatural Girls. We have lots of new things coming up. So please, everybody, go to supernaturalgirls.com and subscribe to the newsletter because we've got some very exciting products that are going to be offered as well as new shows every single week. We have another new guest. There's just lots and lots coming up, so you don't want to miss any of it. So make sure you sign up.
They really have to because we're not going to reveal what's coming out, but pretty soon in the next few weeks we will have some amazing products coming out, and people do not want to miss that. So.
No, they don't.
No.
They don't at all.
Mm-hmm.
So what else has been going on in your life that sped by so quickly?
I don't know. I think it's just being around with the family for the last few weeks. That keeps you just going and busy all the time. And sometimes, I wake up in the morning, I have a list of what I want to get done, and before I know it, I'm looking up at the clock, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I don't know where the hours went. I really don't.
Yes, that happens to me as well. I wonder where the day went, and I have to go down my list and say, did I get any of this done, or what happened? I think I stepped into a portal.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. Well, you know what it is? I think a lot of information overload these days, don't you think? Phones
tremendous
ringing
amount
everywhere,
of information overload.
Computer ringing everywhere. My phone is now whistling at me. I really don't know how to get that off, but it's a feature that comes with the phone itself, and every time an email or something comes in, it whistles. And then it's sort of like an automated response of, something whistled, I have to answer it,
Yeah.
Really
it's like
don't.
You're always on alert, yes.
Yeah. So I got to get rid of that whistle on my phone, but
that's
I don't know.
a little too much. Well, one thing I do want to share with everybody, last week when we had Laura Eisenhower on the show, we had an event where a strange voice started to sound underneath her voice. And I want to let everybody know what I did was I contacted a friend of mine who happened to know someone who has a professional studio and is a professional, audio person. And he is working on pulling that sound anomaly out of our show so that we can hear it just on its own. Because at first it did sound a bit like an echo was occurring when Laura was speaking, and then it sounded like her words were just being repeated as if it was an echo, but then it went into something else. And so we want to just give everybody a chance to listen and make their own determination about what that mysterious sound was. But I know both you and I got an uneasy feeling from it. A lot of people have written in who heard the show. They also heard it. It wasn't just something you and I heard. And they've said all kinds of things. They said they thought it was a demon. They thought it was a reptilian. Some people said they didn't think it was evil, but they heard it. Some people thought it was another ancient language that was being spoken. So there's lots of experiences out there of that one event that happened on Supernatural Girls last week. So I just want to let everybody know as soon as I have that clean audio file in my hands, I'm going to post it. And then we'll have another discussion about what that was.
Yeah, maybe we can play it on the air in the next show or two and see what the response is on it. I know that immediately you and I both got, I guess the word uneasy is a good word.
Yes.
Feeling about the energy not being of pure light. So,
right.
And it had nothing to do with Laura at all. I mean, it wasn't
nothing to do with Laura. It
yeah.
just kind of came up and showed itself,
mm-hmm.
and we shut it down. So,
yeah.
But before we shut it down, there is an audio experience that I would like to play so that everybody can hear it, just that one piece, that selective piece, and without all of the other things that were going on, because Laura was speaking. She didn't hear it at first. I was speaking. You were speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I wanted it isolated so that we could play it and hear really what was going on. It was so strange. It was truly supernatural. So got to see what happened.
It really
with that.
was.
Yes.
And people can go back to the archive and listen to the show and hear it too. So yeah.
They can, and it occurs, just so everybody knows, it occurs 1 hour and 25 minutes into the show. So
Fascinating.
I have even more paranormal news, and this is very exciting news. This is the story that probably everybody, I hope, in the audience has had a chance to read already or hear about on the news. It's been on lots of different news stations and channels. It was in USA Today. It was on Fox News. This is about the mystery angel priest who appeared at a Missouri accident scene. And this story, I have to say, I got very emotional with this story because it just touched me from head to toe. So these emergency workers, basically, and community members in eastern Missouri, they were at this critical accident scene. This woman was trapped in her car, and what happened was her vitals were starting to fail. And her name was Katie Lenz. She's a sophomore at Tulane University. She was driving from her parents' home in Quincy, Illinois, to Jefferson City, Missouri, where she has an internship, and she planned to attend church with friends. And she was driving an older Mercedes, and she was hit head-on by another vehicle. And the accident crushed her vehicle into a ball of sheet metal. And this was all on the driver's side. So the emergency workers tried for at least 45 minutes to remove the twisted metal from this young girl, and they were not having a lot of luck. So there was a helicopter waiting to take her to the nearest trauma center, but they were, as I said, having difficulty getting their machinery to cut through this metal in the Mercedes, and she was not looking very grim for her, like she may not survive. So she just said out loud, please pray with me. And all of a sudden this priest appears out of nowhere and says, I will pray with you. And they described him as silver-haired. He was in his 50s or 60s, wearing black pants, black shirt, black collar with a white insert. And it struck the emergency personnel as rather odd because this part of the road was blocked off from 2 to 3 miles around, so that no one could really have access. also,
and
no one from the nearby...
many people saw him. Many people saw him. Yeah.
A lot of people from the nearby communities were there, and nobody recognized him also. They saw him, but they didn't recognize him. Mm-hmm. And they were all local people. They came from 4 different towns, and they've only got one Catholic church, and it wasn't their priest. So the priest, he was pretty tall, they said. He was around 6 feet tall, medium build, and he approached Katie and anointed her with oil, and he began to pray openly with her. And also the other emergency workers said they heard a voice from somewhere, and they don't know from where, telling them to be calm, and that after the prayer was finished that their machinery would work and they would be able to get her out of the car. So they actually had another team that showed up with other equipment, and they were able to get her out, cut her right out of the car. And she was airlifted to the trauma center. And they went back to thank the priest, and guess what? He is nowhere to be found.
Vanished.
Nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
So there were about 80 photographs that were taken from minutes after the accident happened, and he was not in any of them. So
it gives you the chills just hearing the story, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It's truly an amazing story, and I think it goes right into the fabulous book that Robert Brenner has written, which is called Supernatural and Strange Happenings in the Bible. I mean, clearly there are miracles that are written about in the Bible, and there are miracles happening today. And this looks to be one of them. So people are astounded by this, and I love it. I love that people are really astounded. Yeah.
But what bothers me a little bit is that I believe miracles occur all the time, and I see them in my own life, even if other people think that they're small or whatever. I think they're huge. And mostly what we hear about is the negative stories, of aliens coming down to abduct us and, all kinds of, not that doesn't happen to some people, but it seems like we focus on a lot of dark energy, conspiracy theories, all this kind of stuff, when in reality there are many more miraculous stories that could be put way out there, and I just love that aspect of this story, that it really gives us hope, that we can connect.
It is a hopeful story, you're right, and it's got all the elements of a true miracle, and I think it is just an amazing story, and I'm thrilled that it hit mainstream media, so that people can read about it in their usual newspapers and watch it on their usual news channels instead of having to search through an alternative news outlet to find a story like this. So this is great. This has just been a wonderful event, and certainly Katie Lenz was truly blessed that day, despite the horrific car accident that she was in, that this priest showed up to pray with her, and she was released from that car.
Amazing.
Yes.
Just amazing. I love stories like that. They're just so, I don't know, they just fill me with all kinds of warm feelings, and the idea that people are receiving the energy of this kind of miracle. Just the energy, just hearing about it makes you more hopeful and makes you believe that things can turn around and turn out right, And
it makes you feel more connected to the spirit. It's that the spirit is not so separate from us in our everyday lives. This is a wonderful example of an appearance that made a tremendous impact, and a powerful, positive one for everybody. Not just Katie Lenz, who was the victim in the car crash, but for all the emergency workers. Everybody was there is still, I'm sure, astounded by what happened that day.
Well, I'm sure they are. They'll never forget it either.
Yes. So, shall we bring our guest on?
We should, and we have Robert on the line, and let's welcome him live on the air. That would be only if my computer would work, though. There it goes. Hello, Robert. This is Helene. You're live on the air.
Hello, Helene.
Hi, Robert. Patricia Baker here. How are you?
Hi, Patricia. I'm doing fine.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on our show. This is a great topic, and I have to say I'm very impressed with your book. It is so well written, and I know you took 10 years to do the research on this. It's just quite an accomplishment what you have here. And again, the name of the book for our audience is Supernatural and Strange Happenings in the Bible, an engineer's study of Scripture. And this can be found on Amazon.com for everybody who would like to buy a copy, and I certainly recommend it. It is a real page-turner, believe it or not. It's excellent. It's just excellent. So
thank you.
Tell us a little bit about you and how you got started on this.
Well, my background is as an engineer and also as a submarine officer. I spent some time in the military. And as I was working as an engineer, I got pretty involved in some microelectronic research, and I worked at a research lab. And that's not how the book started, though. The book began way back when the 9/11 happened and when this country got hit. I was as shocked as the rest of America, that our country was so violently attacked. And so I wondered, how could evil do such harm out there so fast? And so I was looking for a reason for the tragedy. I wanted to help other people not be afraid of the future, as well as feel more confident myself. At the same time, my mother back in Michigan was moving into an assisted living apartment after my dad had died. I called it graduated out of this life. And then she moved into a senior care facility for the rest of her life, and she was always a strong Christian lady and interested in me and my writing because I was writing books since the 80s, even though my books were pricing books for small business owners. So I began writing articles about things from the Bible that interested her and me, things like giants and dragons and demons and supernatural powers. And these articles were really popular with not only my mother but also with the other seniors at the center. And each time an article would arrive, the nurses there would read it to the residents. And more people began encouraging me. They said, "You got to put us in a book." Well, life goes on, and I was in California busy running my own small research and information publishing company. So I didn't have time to really put it into a book, but then the bottom fell out of the economy in the Great Recession of 2007, 2008. And most of my buyers who were buying the pricing books became less interested in pricing and more interested in keeping their businesses alive. Many did not survive in their businesses, and my pricing information sales dropped by about 50%.
Oh, my.
And then they never did recover, so I began looking for a new genre of books to produce. And about this time, a minister and two small business owners, challenged me to write a book, research and write a book that focused on a unique aspect of the Bible. They wanted me to see how many incidents and events I could find that were related to the supernatural or paranormal. And since sales of my pricing books were lackluster at best, I put my energy into this new product. So I began reading the Bible in earnest, seeking verses related to the supernatural, and I looked at a number of translations of the Bible, and I was on a vertical learning curve. It gave me a whole new perspective of Bible history. Here I was an engineer studying a book on Scripture, and so as an engineer, you're trained to study, analyze, hypothesize, and then develop criteria for testing and checking findings, what we call a scientific method. Analysis of the Bible often relies on historical records with interpretations based on the perception of the writer and archaeological evidence whose origin may be called into question. The most reliable analysis occurs when history and archaeology are evaluated together. So my approach
is to study... if I can just stop you for a second here,
sure.
Robert, because, there, as you mentioned in your book at the very beginning, you talk about how some people believe that the Bible is true word for word. And then there are other people who think it's a fantasy. And there are other people who think it's symbolic. So what did all of your research lead you to think about all of this?
I didn't evaluate it. I was trying to collect information. What I wanted to find out was, what does the Bible say about supernatural or paranormal? I wasn't going to try to push one thought or another or prove or disprove anything. I wanted to identify what first before I started looking at why and how. So I was open-minded, and I looked at it. I kept my mind open, and I just approached with an open mind, viewing the document through the eyes of a person who's technically trained and a skilled engineer. So I decided to carefully read and capture everything I found. I didn't intend to challenge or analyze how some of these things happen. I just wanted to identify what was in there.
Were you surprised by the amount of supernatural occurrences you found?
I was just astonished, and the more I read, the more excited I became, because I had opened the door to a completely different world in the Bible. It's a mystical world of beings from other dimensions and humans and extraterrestrials with amazing powers. I learned about giants and dragons and dinosaurs, instant death and disease, instant healing, and even miraculous resurrections from the dead. A world that had teleportation, levitation, and unidentified flying craft of monsters and unseen entities, a parallel world of multiple heavens. It was a terrific experience for me.
This is great because you have really given exactly what they asked you to do, a unique perspective on the Bible. And to me, it made things come alive in a whole different way of looking at Scripture. And I found it, like I said, a real page-turner. I mean, your book, it's over 500 pages long for everybody who's about to embark on this, but I'll tell you what, each page I found fascinating, and I couldn't wait to read the next, and the next, and the next, because all of these things, the power over demons, power over animals, all of these strange and paranormal subjects that you were able to catalog, it just took a whole different spin on the Bible. I love it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed doing it, and I actually had PKs, preachers' kids, would send me emails and say, "I'm so thankful you're doing this book on the supernatural side of the Bible, because all my life I got the theology, but I never got the mystical side. And so now you're just driving straight into it and going to it and looking and finding out and reporting it." And so they're pretty pleased. And so I've got a lot of feedback on people happy that I'm doing this.
I bet, because, again, it just makes it so much more exciting and so much more interesting. And certainly way back then, there was room for this. I mean, there was room for people to report paranormal events, and it was, like, considered a part of the culture, it appears. Whereas today, we're just now coming into a place where we're a little more accepting of supernatural and paranormal events. And I think that's why, to go back to the mysterious angel priest, we're now seeing that in the mainstream media, where years back, I don't know if we would have. So there appears to be much more room, much more understanding in today's culture also. And it's perfect timing for your book.
Thank you. Yeah, and the story you related when you first opened the show with that priest, things like that are happening more and more today, because it's kind of like everything's coming to the surface, and there's more and more supernatural happening now than ever before in history. And so it's an exciting time to be alive and follow all this.
And so you're also hearing more stories like this mystery priest, yes?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and are these being reported to you directly, or are these the things you're also reading about like we are?
Most of it, people are telling me. They'll share, we're over at dog park with the dogs running around. People say, I had this thing happen to me, and those sort of things. Those kind of stories. It's word of mouth, people talking about it. For one thing, I did notice, too, is that the churches have not been really open to going into the supernatural side of all this. So I've got much less response from churches than I have from all the rest of the people out there in your audience, and certainly in a lot of the how do I put this, in different professions that are not necessarily part of the church. I thought that's fascinating. Why would they not want to look at that?
That is a great question. It's a great question. It does deserve an answer. And it's one of the things that I was interested in reading about in the report, in the news report on the mystery angel priest, is that the churches in the area all said, look, we don't know who this priest is, and we're not investigating it either. To us, it's over and done with. And I thought that was interesting. Kind of like, we're going to just close the door on this. It's not one of our live priests, so that's where it's going to be. And then, Helene, you also picked up on some other energy around this whole event. Do you want to share some of that?
Well, on that particular event, I picked up immediately picked up on Padre Pio energy. So I don't know if he's sort of connecting with spirits who are here to help on Earth or what. Now, the man who showed up at that particular tragic event was not Padre Pio, but his energy was all around it. So I'm going to ask and see if I can get a name, but it's quite fascinating. And just to comment on what you were saying, Robert, I think that there's two things going on here. First of all, back in biblical times, there was no TV or computer or kind of electronic interference with information, and so people accepted what was in front of them much more readily. They were superstitious. They understood that energies were around them. They were able to connect to that because they didn't have the distraction that we have. And so science has closed all that down over many years. And now the way I feel about it is that 5D energy has come in. We're being asked to be a better planet. We're being asked to be more spiritual people. And because this has become more into the light, people are questioning things more, whereas before they wouldn't approach you and say, hey, this happened to me, it was weird. Well, now it's not as weird since there are so many television shows and so much talk about it, right? So it's sort of a twofold thing about why it's happening more. And I also think that people are allowing it now. They don't feel crazy. They don't feel out of step. And since spirits or the spirit realms or the angelic realms or whatever interdimensional, they're trying to help the planet. They're getting through to more and more people as the gateways open, but at the same time we're more open to it also, like we were back in the day, because it is generally more acceptable now, at least to talk to some people, whereas before, 100 years ago, it wasn't acceptable to talk to anybody about it maybe.
And there's also it's almost a merging of science and technology and religion right now.
Yeah.
Things are opening up, we're discovering things, and people are saying, that's true. I can share some more of that later on in the show here about some of the technology things that are going on, but it's pretty fascinating.
So you basically then set off on this path to identify all of these things, and you came up with, I believe you said it was over 550 verses?
That's right, 550 verses associated with supernatural events or strange incidents.
That's a huge amount. Yeah.
It is. Well, some of the verses, or the incidents, were talked about in other books of the Bible, so I combined the ones that are duplicated different stories, and I came up with 390 unique incidents. And so these unique incidents, I organized those by the power that was being exhibited by the supernatural force, and that ended up with 8 chapters in the book. And I studied these and wrote the book. And for every chapter, I brought examples into the story where I would describe different things in that particular power, like power over matter, or power over people, or power over demons or animals. And I'd bring out actual stories from the Bible so people could read about that and they could see not only what it was, but where it happened, when it happened, and who was involved.
It's just so fascinating. It is really fun to read this book. And I can see where so many people in congregations or not in congregations would find this just a wonderful read and an experience of the Bible that brings it to a whole other level, where people, see, here's the difference, too, I think. People are experiencing more and more of this, as you've just mentioned. People are talking to you about it and saying, hey, this happened to me or that happened to me. And it's a direct experience. They're not going through an organization to have this experience. They're just having the experience, which may be one of the reasons why these institutions don't really want to go further with it. It's a direct experience, and it's a lot of fun. It's exciting. I mean, this is all great stuff. It's the person connected to spirit directly.
And it's real. And the other thing that now you gals have been working in this field for a long time, but I haven't. I've been just an engineer working out there in microelectronics, and when I went through this Bible, what I realized after reading it is that we are all spirits. We're in a human body, but we're actually spirits, and a spirit never dies. So if you have that attitude and you understand that, then when someone dies in this world, they actually graduate out of this life and get out of that human body, then I become a spirit, and things are really good after that.
Yes, and in your book you talk about how the research that you did actually brought you a sense of peace and calm about the future.
It did. It really did. I don't worry a bit about what's going on in the future now. I don't even worry about what's going on today.
You know, what a big quantum leap you've made as an engineer in your training from that scientific experience and education that you have into this understanding. It's amazing.
I enjoy talking to other engineers and other scientists because I can talk to them at their level. And for example, I talked to a guy that was in charge of the Atlas program down at Cape Canaveral or Cape Kennedy, and I explained to him how E equals mc squared, Einstein's special theory of relativity. You can take that formula and you can move around, so you could have m, or mass, is equal to E over c squared, and E is energy and c is light. And when you talk to people about, when you hear the word God, what do you think? Well, I think of a super bright light, or I think of pure energy, okay? So if I have energy and I have light, I can make mass. Out of nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
There's your manifestation right there.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And so these technical people look at it and say, that's interesting. I got to think about that one.
So you are one of the pioneers, basically, helping scientists to combine their training with the spirit. How nice. What an expansion.
It's a real joy to be here and to do that and to talk to people who are technically to start with, because we understand how we approach problems and looking for solutions. And I share what I found, and everyone has to do their own research and make their own decisions. Just like if someone doesn't want to believe the things that I found, that's okay. It's not their time. Their time will come, but it's not their time right now.
And that's interesting. And so it's a live and let live philosophy that you have here, and people are entitled to their own beliefs. But what's so great about your book and the way you've written it, I mean, even in the beginning of your book, you talk about when you start to read this book, keep a Bible next to you so that you can directly look at and reference the things I'm talking about. So There's no question that this is where you got the information.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's terrific.
It's been a real journey for me, a very enjoyable journey, and I'm just getting started on it. I have a lot of people after me and talking to me, and now I've been out talking to Rotary clubs, and they have a lot of questions, and it's fun. It's enjoyable talking to people about this.
Terrific. So I'm sorry, Helene, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that we'll take this opportunity to take a break, but if you'd like to wait, we can do that.
No, let's take a break now, and then we'll delve into some of Robert's favorite stories from the Bible.
And can't wait to hear those stories. But
I know there's so many that he can talk about, over 550 verses. So we better take that break now and stay tuned, everybody.
Well, Robert is the author of Supernatural and Strange Happenings in the Bible, and you can find that on Amazon. And we hope that everybody calls in their question to Robert at 646-478-0828. We'll be right back.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are you getting screwed on your property taxes? How to find out and how to fix it. Available on Amazon.com.
Sometimes life can be a challenge. Would you like insight and guidance to help you make the best choices right now? Contact Helene at angelslighthouse.com to make your personal appointment for a psychic reading or energy alignment. Helene is a direct channel to the angelic realm and is remarkably capable of connecting to the living as well as to your loved ones on the other side. Helene is available to clients all over the world via phone or Skype, and it's simple to set up a group reading anywhere. Visit angelslighthouse.com, where you'll find an easy way to schedule right online. And while you're there, sign up for the Angels Lighthouse newsletter and receive information on all the free energy circles, giveaways, and jewelry with a message. Visit angelslighthouse.com and contact Helene today.
Well, thank you for staying with us, and we're back with our guest, Robert Brenner. Please call in at 646-478-0828 to ask him your questions. And I just wanted to make one comment before we get going, Robert, and that is that I just found it phenomenal that you actually found peace in all of the information, because I think that that's really where it all leads us. And sometimes, you know, we all talk to people who are terrified of death, but it's not really death, it's just a continuance of the journey, right? And once we understand that, I think it's so easy to feel hopeful about the future and not be concerned about what might happen down the road as we pass into another realm, right?
Exactly, yeah. Last week I was visiting a friend, an elderly gentleman who's getting ready to die. And he's got lung cancer, but he was a really good guy. And so I went over to see him, and I told him, I said, "Hi, George." I said, "I understand you're about to graduate." And he looked at me. I says, "You did a good tour. You did great for everyone around you. You helped people. You helped this country, and it's okay for you to go ahead and exit out and just kind of finish your tour and go on into the spirit world and be with all the rest of your relatives and friends." And he sat there talking to me for an hour and a half after that, and he's pretty close within days of passing, but his whole attitude changed because he realized that it's okay to get out of this and get into the other side. Everything's good.
Well, I think that that's unfortunate when people are getting ready to make a transition, that others kind of ignore it. They talk around it. They talk about daily necessities and food and everything to avoid the topic. But when you talk to someone who's passing just like that, it seems to make them feel better, you know?
He shook my hand 6 times before I left. The guy was really felt better. And even my dad, he was in the Second World War, and he was on a landing tank ship, and he drove a landing craft into Iwo Jima and to Okinawa. And when he was landing Marines on Iwo Jima, one of the people that landed there was a guy named Newt. And Newt, he swore up and down my dad was the guy that drove him in. So they were friends all their lives. And when Newt was getting ready to graduate, I drove up to Oregon to go visit him before he went so I could just say goodbye and honor him for my dad, because my dad had already graduated. And I went up there, and I walked in the room, and Newt's laying on his bed, and the whole family's there, and Newt had a couple of daughters, and one of the daughters, all she wanted to find out was how much money she's going to get when her dad dies, so she was kind of out of the picture, I guess. But the Newt is laying there, and his wife's sitting there, and all these people, and it's all real down and depressed. And I walked in with the same attitude. I said, "Hi, Newt." I says, "So you're going to graduate?" And I started telling everybody the neat things that Newt did for me. He taught me how to pan for gold and how to use this wood called caron they have up in Oregon to make real nice paneling. And as I'm talking to him like that and talking to the group, he puts his arm up. Now, he's in a coma. He puts his arm up, and he goes, like that. I took his hand. I said, dude, if you want to join us, you go ahead and join us. I said, you were a good guy. You had a good tour. You did your job, and it's okay to go ahead and pass on. And when I had to go leave then, because I had another commitment, so I'd get ready to leave, and his wife would follow me out of the room, and she gets out in the hallway of the hospital there, and she gave me a big hug. She says, I am so thankful you came because you totally changed the attitude and environment in that room. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, it's okay. The Newt was a good guy. He did his job, and it's okay for him to go.
That's great. And I love the words that you're using. You know, when you talk about the tour, you know, that you've done your tour, and it's okay to graduate. You are putting it, you're framing all this in a real positive way. And that's again, just a great amount of light that you're bringing to situations that are normally dark, depressing, everybody's filled with pain, and here you're just changing all of it. And what a minister of light you are. That's tremendous.
Thank you. And I learned this by doing all this research and reading through the Bible, that here's what it's all about. We should be helping each other. Exactly.
And so as you're going through the Bible and you're finding all of these supernatural events, are there any of them that really struck you as something special? I mean, they're all special and they're all unusual, but for you personally, which ones stood out for you?
I've always liked the story of the flood, and so I did research about the era and the time around the flood when Noah built that ark. It's just a fascinating time to me because when the earth was formed, the earth had this, it's kind of like a canopy going around it. It's about 24 feet thick or so, and it's all full of moisture. And the sun never got through there. So here's all these people living on Earth, and they're all protected from the sun. They always have moisture. They always have all kinds of plants. And the whole continent was one continent called Pangea. And one day, Noah gets told to build this ark. Well, Noah's dad was Lamech, and his grandfather was Methuselah, the guy that lived the longest. And all these people lived real long lives, and they also grew pretty tall. Some people believe that Noah and his family were actually pretty tall people, like 7 or 8 feet tall. I don't know.
Oh, my goodness.
That's what they're talking about now. So anyway, he's told to build this ark, and he was told to make the ark 450 feet long, and that's a 1.5 football field long. Make it 45 feet high with 3 decks and 75 feet across, and this huge thing made out of cedar. Well, there's no water on him except some small streams. So the people thought he was out of his mind. Probably his dad and grandfather did too.
Yeah.
So it took him 120 years for he and his 3 sons to build this, but they did build it. They got all through with it, and I'm kind of putting myself in his frame of mind. And Noah looks around and says, "Okay, Lord, the ark is done. Where on earth am I going to find all these animals you want me to get?" And then all of a sudden, the animals start showing up. And they came in the proper order, in the proper pair order. The animals go walking up and go right on the ark. What made them do that? You know, there were 14,000 species of animals, and they had to get all these things on the ark, and so they just came on there. And the ark closed up, and they had one door, and all of a sudden they were told to sit there and be patient. In 7 days, it's going to start raining. Well, nobody knew what rain was then. And then after 7 days, they hear a pitter-patter on the top on the roof and go, "What is that?" Drops of rain coming down on the roof of this ark. And the people outside looked around and saw that too. Now, Methuselah had died, and Noah's dad, Lamech, died about 5 years before this. So here's Noah, 600 years old. That's a lot of work for a guy 600 years old, but he did pretty good. So he's on this ark, and it starts to rain. Then it starts to pour. And then the earth opens up, and all the springs started letting all the water out. And that canopy around the earth, that just opened up and dumped all the water down on earth. And so it was pouring for 40 days. And the people out there, first they're making all kinds of comments, laughing at Noah. Then they're not laughing, they're cursing Noah. And after a while, they're swimming around in the water trying to find a high ground. And then after a while, there's no sound out there. And so he's on this ark floating around. Now, he had big rocks hanging off the side of the ark to kind of stabilize the ship so it wouldn't rock around too much. But they were on that ark for a long, long time. How long? He was on that ark for a year.
Oh, my.
So it wasn't a real short time thing, 40 days and you're done and get out. So the whole story of Noah and that ark to me is awesome, because here these animals just show up like they're supposed to, like it's a plan. So that was a story that always fascinated me.
That is an incredible story. There are some expeditions that have been undertaken to try to find this, and some people feel that they have found evidence that this ark really existed.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Some of the people who were doing the searching for the ark believe they found it, but they were not allowed to get in there to really find out for sure. There's political and religious forces out there that do not want these people to go in there and dig up and say, yeah, I found the ark, I've proven it. But other things about the flood happen, because there's people who say the flood never happened. Well, almost every culture's got a flood in it, at least a story about a flood. And then a couple of years ago, they found that beach down the bottom of the Baltic. It was down like 500 feet. And here's this beach down there with all these boats and pottery and stuff like that. And they said, wait a second, why was that down there 500 feet below the surface of the Baltic? And then they realized, there was a big flood that covered the whole earth, and when the water receded, it didn't go back to the same level. In fact, now scientists say that if all the ice and all the water on Earth were all dumped into it and the land was all kind of flowed over and made level, that our Earth would be covered with water by a mile deep. That's why we got mountains and everything else, so we can go up someplace and look out and see the horizon. So it's a fascinating story, but it did happen, and they're finding more evidence to prove that. Now they've got archaeological evidence where they go down and they dig down through the rocks and they say, that's a sign of a flood right there that caused that. It's all becoming known. So
does the Bible reference Pangea specifically, or are you
the Bible
calculating
doesn't call it
Pangea?
Pangea? No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're going back. You're going
Okay.
back in time according to the Bible. How long ago do you think this occurred?
It was about 2500 BCE or before the Christian era. A long time. It's 5,000 years ago for us, just about.
Okay. I'm getting it as longer than that, but...
okay.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
And it's so amazing, too. I mean, I'm sure you find this interesting, Helene, too, because you get a lot of information, you get downloads, so to speak, from the other realms. And it's just so amazing to me that Noah did what he was told. I mean, he got this guidance and he followed it despite all of the finger pointing and...
Oh, I don't think he got guidance.
What do you think he got?
I think he got whacked upside the head, Patricia.
Okay, so it was the whacked upside the head guidance.
When they want you to do something, they're not going away. They're very loud. So
so you don't think he had a choice? It was like, you're going to do this.
No, right. I mean, a lot of people get guidance. We all have our connection to our higher selves and the divine and all of that, but if you're an open channel or someone completely receptive to this information, you can hear a megaphone that won't stop. So I'm sure he did get whacked upside the head. I think it was an edict, not a suggestion, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yes, I'm being funny, but that's actually how it goes, so.
Well,
something
sometimes
he
we all
could not
need
ignore.
That too.
Yeah. You've gotten those messages, Patricia, that you can't ignore.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. But this one must have been really loud, and it's amazing. All of the differences, too, like you talk about the size of these people. These people were really tall, 7-8 feet. I mean, that's really tall compared to the stature of human beings today. And then also, I just can't even conceive of being on a boat with so many animals for that long of a time. I mean, I think of all the logistics of that. How do you feed them?
If you're a farmer, you think about all the things you got to clean up.
That's right. I was thinking about that, too. Yes, exactly. I mean, there's so many questions here. But, again, you're bringing out such valid information about the fact that there was a flood and something did occur, and more information is coming out to suggest this all did happen.
Now, Robert, as far as Noah's Ark goes, do you think that some component of it might be metaphorical? or do you think it's all reported exactly the way it was?
I take everything as it comes. I have nothing holding me back. Mm-hmm. All I know is that people talk about finding actual wood in the place up there in the mountains of Ararat. And,
right.
There's so much in the Bible that I take, and I just take it as face value. It's okay. This is what they say happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, just reporting it. I'm not trying to say, well, this is kind of like symbolic. Well, not necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are scholars who argue over the symbolism continually, whether this word means this or that or the other thing, and so forth. So it's good that you produced a book that really shows what is actually said in the Bible without any idea of your own thought about it or, trying to decide.
I had no biases. What I did do, by the way, when I was putting this book together is I asked a person who's an expert in Hebrew and Greek, and I said to this person, I said, would you read everything that I write and vet it for me? Check it out and find out if I'm on the track or if I'm way off track. And we had a number of meetings, hours of meetings sitting there, and he said, everything you've written about is the same way it's written in Hebrew or in Greek. So he says, you're right on the right track, and he got all excited.
So tell us about, now I'm going down your list, and you have a wonderful list of all of these supernatural events, and you have a chapter on power over life and death. Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It was fascinating that when I was studying the Bible and you look at the way the society was and the economy was back in that world back then, when you had a family and you have a man and a wife and you have children, if the man dies, the wife has a real problem unless she can find some way to get income, because only the men would work. The women were their role was to take care of the house, to do the cooking, take care of the children, and then let the man go out and earn the money. Well, then when the man is gone, what do you do? And I found actually 3 instances in the Bible where people had died, and the poor wife, she's just shattered, because what are you going to do? She's out there, she got no income at all. In fact, my next-door neighbor just wrote a book on her grandmother it's in Syria and northern Israel, and her grandmother was in that position because her husband was taken by the Turks at the First World War, and her husband never came back, and she had to look for a way to make money. And so what she did is she learned how to be a midwife, and she would help these other women have the babies because they couldn't afford to have doctors and hospitals and stuff. So she found a way to do that. But back in the biblical days, when I was looking at these 3 instances, in one case, Jesus is walking down a road, and he sees this funeral procession coming, and as everybody's moaning and they're crying, and the wife is crying, the mother is, because her husband had died before and her son just died. And so Jesus stops the procession, and he raises the kid back to life and gives the kid back to his mother so he can help earn the money to take care of her. So that worked out real well. And I found several cases like that where when the husband was gone because he was either killed or died for some reason or another, and the poor woman is left with kids, and then she's got to find something to do, and then one of the children dies, maybe the only child dies, and then here comes somebody like one of the prophets, and he raises that child and gives the child back to the mother and says, here you go, keep going, you're doing fine. I thought that was pretty fascinating. The other one that I thought was wild is the story of Lazarus. Now, many people heard about Lazarus. He was a guy that was raised from the dead. He had died. He and his 2 sisters, they visited with Jesus a lot. And one day, Lazarus got sick, and the sisters sent for Jesus, and he was over on the other side of the Jordan River down south, and he didn't come. Lazarus died. And he was died, and after he was dead for a couple of days, then Jesus started going back towards the town where Lazarus lived, and he walked in there, and his sisters, Lazarus' sisters, came out and say, "Oh, Master, if you'd have been here, he wouldn't have died." And he says, "He's going to live." And they say, "I know, at the end times he'll be raised." He says, "No, He said, "Where is he buried?" And they showed him where the tomb where he was in. He walked down by the tomb, and they rolled a stone aside. And they said, "We shouldn't roll a stone aside because he's been dead for 3 days or 4 days. And, the body starts to corrupt and starts to decay, and it's going to be a lot of smell coming out." That's why they put all the incense and all the perfumes on the bodies at the time. Well, he had him open up that tomb, and he said, "Lazarus, come out." And everybody's standing there looking in the black tomb in the darkness, and all of a sudden this form comes out, and this guy's all wrapped up in this like a swaddling clothes, like ace bandages and everything. They had him all wrapped up. He comes out, and he's trying to walk, but he's coming right out of the cave, and out of the tomb, and he's alive. And he can't believe it either. So Jesus told him to go ahead and take all those wraps off him, clean him up, and get him dressed in some good clothes. And the way the Jewish tradition is that the first question Lazarus asked when he came to life is that, "Do I have to die again?" And they said, "Yeah, you do." And they said he didn't smile after that.
Gee, just amazing stories of this.
Yeah. And I wanted to find out what happened to Lazarus after that. And so I did more digging, more looking in other types of historical documents, and it seems like Lazarus was there when Jesus was crucified, and then after the resurrection, when the Christians were being persecuted, the Jewish priest and the leadership couldn't kill a Christian, but the Romans could. And the Roman soldiers had no need to do that, so they said, "You can't kill him, but you can put him adrift." And so Lazarus, he was put on a boat, because all the water going into the Mediterranean Sea, like from the Nile and everything, it all flows into the Med and flows out through the Strait of Gibraltar out into the Atlantic. Well, so the current's going that direction. So they put these guys on these boats without oars, without sails, and without a rudder, and put them adrift. Well, on the one particular boat that Lazarus was on with his two sisters was a guy named Joseph of Arimathea. And Joseph of Arimathea was a guy that actually got the tomb for Jesus to bury him. Joseph of Arimathea, he was a pretty wealthy guy because he learned how to sail with the Phoenicians, and he had a bunch of ships, and they would go over to England and get tin and bring the tin back to the Romans and sell it to the Romans. So they made their canteens and cooking things like that with tin. So Joseph of Arimathea knew how to sail. So here they are. They put them adrift off of the Palestine out in the water and let them drift. They float out there. Joseph of Arimathea, being a sailor, he says, "I know how to make a rudder or oars," and he does, and they work their way over to Marseille, France. They get over to France, and they get sails and rudders and oar and all that stuff, and they sail over to England. And according to the stories, then they started the first above-ground Christian church over there, and Lazarus was one of the leaders. And when he wanted to go do missionary work, Lazarus and his two sisters came back over to France, and they started a Christian church in France, and he became the first bishop in France. And he died a natural death. Yeah.
What an incredible story. I mean, it's miracle after miracle here. It just doesn't stop. And it's really great to understand life from that perspective. I can see why. This gives you a sense of peace and understanding and a much larger picture of all of this.
Yeah. And another story is the one about Daniel. When Jerusalem was overpowered and the city of Jerusalem was taken by the Babylonians, they took all the people they considered to be of noble birth, and that one of them was Daniel, and also his three buddies. I can't remember their names in Hebrew, but they became Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But those four guys were taken all the way up to Babylon. And so I'm saying, well, how far is it from Jerusalem to Babylon? 500 and some miles? How fast could they travel? Well, the roads they had right then, when they were making roads, they'd move the rocks aside, and they'd go down the center between the rocks, and that was the best road you could get until they could pave things. So they were taking these people, all these people being exiled, up to Babylon, and most of the people were walking except Daniel and his three buddies, and they're riding in some kind of a chariot or a cart. And so I did some studies on Babylon. What was Babylon like? Well, Babylon was a lot like Washington, D.C. today. A lot of huge buildings, a lot of opulence, a lot of very fancy, expensive things. Huh. And the guy who was in charge of the Babylonian Empire wanted to get Daniel and these three guys over there and train them and win them over so they would be supportive of the Babylonian political system. Well, Daniel and his 3 buddies went over there, and they were put into training on how to be good servants to King Nebuchadnezzar. But Daniel and his 3 buddies would not bow down or worship the idols they had over there, and so they started getting in trouble, but nobody wanted to touch them. And so what happened is, first of all, Daniel, he gets put into a den of lions. They threw him in there because he wouldn't bow down to the statue, and he was in the den of lions, and nothing happened to him. And so the next day, the king goes down and finds Daniel there, and he's fine. And so he takes the people who were putting all the charges against Daniel, and he throws them in there, and they get killed, and they get eaten. The 3 buddies, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they also refused to bow down and worship the idols, and they got put into a furnace. They call it the fiery furnace. Well, what they were doing is they had these big kilns, and they were making bronze and brass, not brass, but bronze and melting material. They'd melt copper and tin to make bronze, and they had these big furnaces, and they're pretty hot. And so what they had them do, they made the furnace really, really hot, so hot that the people that pushed the 3 guys into the flames, they got burned up. But here's these 3 guys in this fiery furnace, and the people looked in there, and they're not being burned. They're walking around talking to one other. There's a 4th person in. I don't know who that 4th person was, but those people in there, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, not only did they not get burned, but their clothes didn't burn. Even their hair didn't get singed. So they were taken out of that fiery furnace, and the people who made the charges, they were thrown in, which is kind of a neat scenario for the Babylonian Empire. But now we got to step ahead to the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, a guy named Belteshazzar. And Belteshazzar has his palace in Babylon. Now Babylon, when Daniel was approaching Babylon, they get about 20 miles from Babylon, and started seeing the pavement. The road was paved with different pieces of almost like flagstone. And they come in towards Babylon, and it's real shiny because it has all this copper and has gold on the wall, inlays everywhere, and these huge buildings. The wall itself, they said, some stories say that the wall was 300 feet high and it was 75 feet thick. And it was so thick that they had chariot races across the top of the wall. They had 4 or 5 chariots side by side racing across there.
Oh, my goodness.
It was a huge city.
Yeah.
But it had the Euphrates River running right through the city. So at the north end of the Babylon itself, they would get all their drinking water, and at the south end, they would dump all their waste and let it flow downstream towards the sea. And so here's this river going through there, and this king, Belteshazzar, he's having this big party. When he has parties, he had a banquet room that held 1,000 people. And the Bible talks about how many hundreds and hundreds of different animals and meats and things like that they put out there for everybody to eat. So this guy's having this big party. And because he's the elite, the people who lived in Babylon, the common people, could not go out on the street, could not even go in there to the palace, so they stayed in their homes, being quiet and letting a big party going on. Well, a party, they were drinking wine, it became an orgy, and they're going crazy. Well, during the middle of this thing, all of a sudden, this hand appears. Now, this hand, it's kind of like, think of a balloon, and you put your hand inside of a balloon, and you push out through a balloon, and you can see your hand coming out through the balloon. It's kind of like going through a membrane, and that's how this hand looked. The hand appeared right by this king and started writing on the wall. And the king didn't know what it meant, so he gets all his astrologers and all his magicians and says, "You tell me what that means." Well, they couldn't do it. The queen heard him talking and arguing about that, and she said, "Well, there's one guy here who can understand things like this, and that's Daniel." So they brought Daniel in, and the king said, "If you can tell me what that means, I will give you a gold chain around your neck and made you one of the 3rd highest person in my whole kingdom." So Daniel said, "Of course I can." What it says is that you've been weighed and found waiting, and you don't muster enough anymore. You don't make it, so you're going to die. And so the guy gave him his gold chain, and Daniel left. Well, at the same time this is happening, on the Euphrates River up north, the Medes and the Persians are diverting the Euphrates and taking the water going around the city, so the water level going underneath the wall coming into Babylon was getting lower and lower. It got so low they just walked in on like waist-high or knee-high water. And a whole army came in and walked past all these people in their homes. The people in their homes said, "Hey, I got nothing to do with this. It's up to them." They go to the palace, and they go into that banquet room where 1,000 people are, and they were starting to drink out of the goblets they stole from the temple in Jerusalem, drinking wine, and they're all having a big party, and these guys came in and killed them all. So all of them got killed. So that guy got killed that night.
So
it's like here the next day you got, what's his name? Can't remember the guy's name. The guy who was in charge of the Medes and the Persians. He was there, and he's walking down the street, and Daniel comes out holding a scroll. He walks up to the guy and says, I want to show this to you because your name is in here. He says, what do you mean? He says, this was written 180 years, something like that, before by a guy named Isaiah, and it talks about you taking over the kingdom here. And the guy looks at it, looks in there, and there's his name. He says, good grief, you're right.
This particular story, let me just ask you, Robert, this would fall under, in your book, prophecy?
It's under prophecy, yes.
Okay.
This
is just an amazing account of all of the different.
It is.
Oh my goodness, there was so much going on back then. It's amazing too that all of this could have been written down. I mean, basically passed down to all of us.
And look at what's happening historically at the same time. It's just amazing.
It is amazing.
Now, is this all Old Testament? Or
this is Old Testament, yeah.
Old
right.
Testament. So what does the Old Testament say about people using their sixth sense or their psychic ability?
They did. It was a common thing. They had seers all over the place. And even the prophets. I did some studies on the prophets like Isaiah and let's see, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that just escaped me at the time. But all these prophets out there, Elisha and Elijah, they could actually sit back and go into a trance, and they could see things in the future. They could do that. They could also talk about things. And usually the prophets are the guys that went up against the kings and the hierarchy and says, no, you're doing wrong. You're sinning. You're hurting the people. You got to stop doing that. And a lot of times they didn't win. They were just kind of pushed off to the side. But these things kind of happen. But, yeah, that's expected. And every king had somebody that they brought in that would give them counseling and guidance on what the future is like.
And this is an important issue, too, because I know, Helene, you and I have heard this before, where certain people of certain types of religions have said, well, in the Bible, it says that psychic is evil or psychic is bad, and I've never seen it. I've never seen it in the Bible.
They've interpreted it that way, but I think one of the biggest things I hear is beware of false prophets. And so that's a big thing.
And the guy I think of right away is a guy named Balaam. He was a prophet who did pretty good. He was foreseeing the future and everything. He was up in the northern part in what's Iraq today, by Pethor, I think it was called. And this one king way down by Israel, down by Palestine there, when the Hebrew people came across and were getting ready to invade Canaan, go across the Jordan River, and Joshua was in charge, the king of Moab got really upset because there's a lot of people over there, like 1 million people down in this valley getting ready to go across the Jordan. He was afraid they're going to come after him. So he got Balaam, and it took him a little while to get him to agree to come. He was going to pay him to come down and curse the Hebrew people. And what happened is Balaam, first he wasn't going to do it, then he did because they offered him so much money. He had to say yes, and so he's trying to come down with these princes who came and brought him to head south. And as he's going down, he's riding his donkey, and all of a sudden this, like an angel or some messenger appeared right in front of him, right in front of the donkey, but Balaam didn't see it. The donkey did. So the donkey drops down, and Balaam beats the donkey, and the donkey gets up, and the person who was in front there, the being, is gone. So they start ahead again, and it happens again. This being shows up. It's got a drawn sword, and the donkey drops down. And it happens the third time. The third time it happens when Balaam is beating this donkey, the donkey turns around and talks to him and says, why are you beating me? Now, we don't often have animals talk to us like that, except maybe parrots or something. But anyway, that happened, and then Balaam saw the supernatural messenger, and he bowed down, and he was told to go ahead down, but not to curse the Hebrew, but do what God tells him to do. So he goes all the way down south there, and he's being paid. He's a prophet for hire. And he goes down, and
First psychic hotline, see?
Yeah, I guess. They had to walk, man. So he's down there, and rather than cursing, he blessed the Hebrew people. And so the king down there said, well, you get out of here then, because I'm not going to give you any pay, all the money I promised you. And Balaam says, okay, I want to tell you there's going to be a guy coming up out of those people down there in the valley who's going to end up being Jesus the Christ. And Balaam left, and he actually goes out of history. You don't see him again. But he was a prophet who did good, and God was kind of smiling on him until he got greedy and wanted to get more and more money. Then things didn't happen the way he wanted.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So it's okay to make some money, but don't get greedy.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Everything
before.
in balance.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
And you also talk about, in your book, you talk about something that I think is a very important topic, which is demons. So can you tell us a little bit about what you found there? Because I know we've had this conversation before on the show about this type of dark energy. Is it real? And in your book you say, oh, yes, it was real back then, and it's real here today.
That's right. Yeah, it is. And from what I've been able to find out, that demons are paranormal beings that they produce harm or injury, and they possess the minds and body of humans, and they cause them to do and say things really not under their control. And they can be an unclean spirit, a fallen angel, a deceased human, or even a spirit of some unknown type, but they cause demonic possession where they need exorcism to get out of that body, that human. It's a spiritual entity, and it can be conjured up and controlled. In Hebrew mythology, demons were believed to come from the netherworld, or Hades, and they affected the brain and caused diseases like headache, epilepsy, and blindness, and nightmares. They supposedly entered the body and caused the disease, and they overwhelmed or seized the victim and made it necessary for others to draw out the evil demons by incantations or talismanic performances. And Revelation talks about a battle between God's army of angels and Satan's followers, and that's when Satan and his followers are kicked out of heaven down to earth, where they started persecuting the humans. Some believe that demons originate from the Watchers, or Nephilim. It's first mentioned in Genesis 6. Like the book of Enoch, that was written about 300 BCE, and it says that angels descended from heaven before the flood and mated with human women to produce giants. And the demons are the evil spirits of the offspring of fallen angels and earthly women who had died. So when these giants, and they had all their kids, and the kids died, that child, when it died, it became a demon, cursed to wander the earth again. And they said the fallen angels that came down actually led humans to, taught them a lot of things, like how to make weapons for killing each other. It seems like there wasn't any war, people trying to kill each other, until after the fallen angels came on earth. Because you always say, why is there war? Why is everybody fighting all the time? It's all through the Bible. There's all kinds of fighting. Yeah, well, fighting is because those fallen angels were there, or their offspring were there, and they were making people fight, getting them to kill each other. And the angels also, those fallen angels, they brought in cosmetics and astrology, which is not necessarily bad, but they brought all these things in. And then they said that even a Roman Catholic Church teaches that angels and demons are real and not symbolic. So in the Bible, these demons are unclean spirits. During the time when Jesus was on earth, they recognized Jesus, and they knew they had no power over him. And so when Jesus was around a demon or a person who was possessed by a demon, Jesus wouldn't even let them talk. He made them be quiet, and he'd ask them their name, like in that one case when he was down in the southeast side of the Sea of Galilee, and they went to a place called Gadarenes, and there was this guy down there who was demon-possessed, and he's always running around and nude and beating himself with rocks and trying to kill himself because of all these demons. And Jesus went up to this thing, and he wouldn't let it talk, but he says, "What is your name?" And the demon said, "We're Legion. A legion is 6,000. So it's quite a few of them. And then the demons asked if they could, rather than being sent into eternal fire, could they go into these pigs, the swine that were growing, that were being raised over there on the side of the hill? And Jesus said, "Go." And they went in there, and the pigs went nuts and ran down over a cliff, and they all drowned in the Sea of Galilee. Well, the thing that happened on that is the guy who was possessed, he was no longer possessed. So here he is sitting at the feet of Jesus, and he's dressed, he looks nice, he's calm, he's very rational and lucid. And the people in the local area came running down to see what was going on. They found all their pigs were all dead out there in the water. And said, "Wait a second, we're raising these pigs." And what they were doing They were Hebrew people, but they were growing swine to sell to the Romans. The Jewish people couldn't eat pork, but the Romans could, so they were, and it was against the law for Jewish people to grow these pigs or raise them, but they did anyways. They could sell them to the Romans and make some money off them. So they decided they didn't want Jesus around anymore after that. He had to go leave.
What an interesting story! Oh my goodness! But again, you're illustrating something that's a question even today about these entities, and I know our guest last week referred to these entities as disenfranchised, which I think is a good term. I mean, they're just disenfranchised from the spirit, and it's interesting what you're saying about how these things came from the fallen angels, the watchers, or whatever these beings were, and it's fascinating to realize that these energies are still around us today, and they still have power.
They are, for a while. Yeah, the interesting thing, though, is that the demons know they have no power over somebody who's really strong in their faith. And Jesus, of course, they had no power over Jesus. But there's one story about, 6 or 7 of the sons of this one priest decided they wanted to be exorcists too. And so they went into this one house and tried to exorcise this one demon in this guy. And the demon says, I know Jesus, but I don't know who you guys are. And it attacks them. And it drives them out of the place, and they come out, they're all beat up and bloodied and everything else because they weren't true exorcists. They weren't using the name of Jesus when they did the exorcism, so they got hurt.
So they weren't strong in their faith, is what you're saying, and they were just trying to kind of emulate what he was doing.
They didn't even have faith. They just wanted to emulate and wanted to make themselves be important. If they can go ahead and exercise, because maybe they'll get paid next time. Who knows?
Right.
There was one kid that had epilepsy, and he was brought to Jesus because the disciples couldn't get the demon out of this young man. And the young man's thrashing around on the ground. He tries to burn himself, rolling through the fire, and he tries to cut himself and everything else. And the father's beside himself. And so they asked Jesus to take care of it, and Jesus immediately stopped and told the thing, don't talk. And he said, and he demanded he come out, and a demon came out of this kid, and the kid is fine after that. And the disciples asked Jesus, how come you did that and we couldn't do that? Because we did it in your name. And he says, sometimes the demons are so strong you have to use prayer and have a lot more faith before you can get them out.
What a story. My goodness. And even no matter what, I mean, whether these stories really happened or they didn't really happen isn't the issue, so much as it is a lesson and information that we can take and use in our own lives or not. It's a powerful lesson in all of this.
Yeah. I've got a brother back in Michigan that he really follows and he likes to read stories about the supernatural and some of the happenings, and he's also one of these big followers of Bigfoot. And we had a house built back there one time, and he said, well, there's something out there that on the porch walking around this house, and it's some being. And I said, okay, that's all right, because I don't have a problem with that. It's got to stay their place. And then I remember the story that when I was a kid, and I was living in Michigan, and my car broke down. I was a teenager, and I had a typical car, broke down every week, or you have to buy tires every week because you keep buying these used tires for a couple bucks a piece. But anyway, the car broke down, and I had to walk home, and it was out in the country. I had to walk 5 miles to get there. And so I'm walking at 2 o'clock in the morning, walking down this gravel road, and I see something coming. It is, but, for a kid, it's okay. And so I'm looking down the road, and I see something coming towards me. And I said, what on earth is that? So I keep walking, and it's a woman. And she's like in her, early 20s or something. She's wearing almost like a nightgown. It was a white gown she's wearing, walking right towards me. But she walks on the other side of the road, doesn't even look at me, and walks right by. And I'm looking at her saying, what is that? So I go back to my house, and the next morning I ask my parents and my brothers and everything, what did I see there? And they said, oh, you saw a lady in white. I said, what are you talking about, lady in white? They said, well, there's a girl out there that got killed. She was waiting for her boyfriend to get a fight with him or something like that, and she got killed out on that road right there. So she walks the road trying to find peace. I said, well, that's pretty deep.
So you've had your own paranormal experience in contemporary times with this. And also your brother's saying something about Bigfoot, which I find fascinating too. So, all of these things are around us, all these mystical experiences, these unusual creatures, people who haven't passed over, who are still walking amongst us. And again, this is what you're saying. You have found many instances of this in the Bible. So It's brought a whole new light to this subject. It's terrific.
Yeah, and wait till we get into talking about other dimensions, too. That's another good subject.
That's got to be next. Well, how about another commercial break, Helene? Is this a good time to do that before we go into the interdimensional stuff? Helene? Are you with us?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, it is.
Oh, we can hear you now.
Yes, I was on mute. I'm sorry. We have a little activity going on in my neighborhood. I don't know what happened. I had to put it on mute because something exploded.
Oh, my
We'll
goodness.
find out about that later. I don't know. It was too loud for a firework. I don't know.
Uh-oh. Well, you still have power, so it's probably not the transformer.
Do. Well, it might not be my transformer. Maybe it's someone else's. So, anyway, with that excitement, I'm here. I've been listening intently, and I do want to hear about all of these other stories that you have, Robert. It's just amazing the amount of work you've done on this. So everyone stay tuned and give us a call at 646-478-0828. We'll be right back. Good evening, Patricia. How are you tonight? This show is amazing, isn't it?
I'm so excited to be on talking with Robert Brenner tonight. This is a great show. It's very inspiring. And so here we are. We're talking about now some new things that are coming up for Supernatural Girls. And I know you have a special offer for readings. For anybody who wants a private reading, you're offering a special price.
I am, and right now I've reduced it over 30% for the month of August, and all you have to do is go to angelslighthouse.com, click on consultations, and it's already priced at $85 for an hour reading, and that's only going to be posted for another 3 days, Patricia. After that, I go back to my usual rate, and also the rates and availability will be changing this fall because, Patricia, we have a lot of secret projects coming up.
We do indeed. I can't wait till we can finally talk about them with everybody. So this is a great opportunity, though, for people to jump in, get your private reading with Helene, and it's a perfect time because we're coming into fall pretty soon and start of a new season where things go back to the roots, and it's a great time to find out about your direction and any blocks that may be in your way so you can clear them out.
That's true. But I do want to mention also your dream analysis readings. I mean, you're an amazing dream coach.
Well, thanks. I love doing it.
Before, I'm going to say it again. You saved my nighttime, Patricia. I need my sleep. You know, you reach a certain age, and it's like you got to get your beauty rest, or you're not going to function very well. So, I am still grateful for everything you did around my dreams, and I appreciate it very much. And I thought it was awesome. You're very knowledgeable. You've been doing this kind of coaching for years and years, and I would encourage everybody out there who's having questions about their dreams, how to sort of corral their dreams, control their dreams, find information in their dreams, to consider calling Patricia. And that is right on the supernaturalgirls.com website. And while you're there, sign up for the newsletter. Right, Patricia?
Yes, because we have new products that are coming out that are very powerful. And the first one we're going to be introducing is all around prosperity. So there's lots of stuff to look forward to, and you will find out first if you are a subscriber.
Awesome. That's all good. I love this show tonight. I think Robert is amazing, isn't he?
He's a great guest, and he's so well informed and clearly has done his research. And I'll tell you what, this book that he's written is truly fun to read. I mean, it is a great read. So people should run out and buy it. They'll have something exciting to read that'll give a whole different perspective to the Bible and the stories of so long ago. It's great. It's great. And for you, again, we should announce your website, which is angelslighthouse.com, so that people can go there. They can click on your scheduler and schedule right on the website at angelslighthouse.com.
Thank you, Patricia. And they should also buy Robert Brenner's book, Supernatural and Strange Happenings in the Bible. And I have to say, before we cut from break, I really love his clear perspective that he's not judging any of this information. He's just reporting what he's found in the Bible, and that's what I mean, truth is stranger than fiction, right?
It is. It certainly is. That's what this book proves.
We'll be back with you in just a moment. Thanks for staying tuned. And we're back live with our fab guest, Robert Brenner, author of the book Supernatural Happenings in the Bible. Is that the name? No, Supernatural and Strange Happenings
in the Bible.
At Amazon.com. And, okay, so we were going to talk about interdimensionals or aliens, Robert?
Multi-dimension. The other dimensions. You walk around this world and you see height, you see width, you see depth, and that's 3 dimensions. But there are many, many more dimensions. In fact,
oh yes, there are.
I'm talking to the choir here, huh?
You are preaching to the choir.
It kind of started, with you go back to 330 or 275 BCE, and you got a guy named Euclid. He was a Greek philosopher. And he used height, width, and depth to develop Euclidean geometry or plane geometry. And that's where you add up the angles in a triangle, and they always equal 180 degrees, or the angles in a rectangle always equal 360 degrees. Well, one of his colleagues, not a colleague, but a contemporary, a guy named Pythagoras, who was an Ionian Greek philosopher about the same time period, he developed the Pythagorean theorem that related the sides of a triangle with the length of any two, so you can calculate the length of the third. And these are all dealing with the 3 dimensions. And then you got a guy named Nachmanides. I call it Nachmanides because there's other pronunciations, but I can't say them, so I say Nachmanides. He's a Jewish rabbi, and he's a scholar in Spain. And right around the time of the when they had what they call it, the Crusades going over to the Middle East. And he was there about 1200, 1250 BCE, and he started studying the Jewish Torah, the first 4 or 5 books of their Bible, and he looked at the mystical side, at all the supernatural things. He started writing commentaries, and he actually formed a thing called the Kabbalah. But what happened to Nachmanides, he got into a big discussion with the leader of Spain, the king of Spain, and the king had it was a debate. He started a debate with the Catholic Church and Nachmanides to prove the mystical side of the books. Well, what happened is the Nachmanides won the debate, and he ended up writing a thing called the Zohar. It's a book of Jewish mysticism. Well, because he won and he embarrassed the leadership of the church right there, they kicked him out of Spain, and he had to go over to Palestine. And so he started what's called the Kabbalah over there, and that's where he stayed all the rest of his life. But he believed that there were 10 dimensions in the Bible, and he said that there's 4 known and there's 6 that are not known. So he was one of the guys pushing for other multiple dimensions. And then you get a guy named Isaac Newton. It was in 1600 to about 1687, I think. He came up with a thing called laws of motion and universal gravitation. Remember his laws of gravity, things will fall, they'll fall down and hit you in the head with an apple, and so you got to be careful of that. But he said that if things are in motion, they'll stay in motion. And he wrote what's called the basic equations of mechanics. Well, what happened when he did that? He was looking at just, again, height, width, and depth. But his units of gravitation, he actually initiated the Industrial Revolution that we had in the 1800s because of that. George Bernard Riemann was a scientist, a brilliant scientist, a mathematician. He was the son of a poor Lutheran pastor in Germany in 1854. and he showed mathematically that multiple dimensions are likely. He called his work field theory, and because of his field theory, he enabled electromagnetic theory, electricity. A guy named William Weber, a German physicist who worked on electrodynamics and magnetic flux. These are words that you don't have to worry about. But a guy named Faraday who came up with the induction motor, and a guy named Maxwell who came up with electricity and magnetism, and even a guy named Heinrich Rudolf Hertz. They came up with the frequencies we know today. But these guys are all because of George Bernard Riemann, and he was looking at multiple dimensions. And so here we are.
When you talk about multiple dimensions, and you talk about they've been identified by several different religious figures throughout history, they're in the Zohar, they're in the Kabbalah, and they're written about in these other treatises. I mean, what are these other dimensions? Do you have a sense from doing the research you've done to identify them further?
In a way, and in a way not. I'm still learning too.
Yeah,
but
I bet.
They're like Riemann, George Bernard Riemann. He said that there could be as many as 26 different dimensions. Then along comes a guy called Einstein, and Einstein, who was also looking at the multiple dimensions. He's the guy who introduced time into it. So now you got height, width, depth, and time, and it was called the time compendium, where now you've got 4 dimensions you're dealing with. Well, there are other dimensions too, and some of these dimensions, beings that we don't see necessarily live. And in those dimensions where you have the watchers, you have the angels, the top dimension, you're going to have God, the supreme creator, and those kind of things. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute here, but let's go back to a guy named Clive Staples Lewis, or C.S. Lewis. You may have heard of him. C.S. Lewis was an Irish guy, and he was an academic. He was a medievalist. He's a lay theologian, I guess it is, and a poet. And he wrote some books called The Chronicles of Narnia, The Screwtape Letters, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Mm-hmm. And over 100 million copies were sold. Well, C.S. Lewis wrote about a world with multiple dimensions and passageways into and out of portals. And he wrote about a lion he called Aslan, a lion that was a personification of Jesus. And in his world, there are multiple dimensions. So it was there, and even he believed it. In fact, it said, this one scholar told me that he understands that C.S. Lewis and Sigmund Freud once met to debate Christianity versus atheism. And 2 weeks after they had a very intense meeting, Freud committed suicide. C.S. Lewis was a guy that coined the expression, you don't have a soul, you are a soul, you have a body.
Right.
So it's a fascinating thing, but in these dimensions, there are things that can go from one dimension to another. There are beings in the higher dimensions that can see things happening in the lower dimensions, and sometimes it can come out and they can affect things in the lower dimension. For example, that hand that came out in front of the king over in Babylon, that came from one dimension down into another one. So they're there. And my brother, when he was talking about how he's been hunting Bigfoot for 10 years and haven't found him yet, but he heard about this, some ranger or something that took a shot at a Bigfoot, and there's a big flash, and he was gone. I said, well, of course, Rick, you know where he went. I said, that Bigfoot creature, whatever it was, is a being, and it just went into another dimension, back to the one he came from. So you won't see him. You can't get him.
Yeah, that would explain a lot, quite honestly, Robert, about Bigfoot and the stealth of the animal. We've had a number of people on the show talking about their experiences with Bigfoot. And remember, Helene, the people that were sound asleep on the ground, and they had a video, a trail cam picture of Bigfoot leaning over them, and yet they had no idea this creature was there. And we were all discussing how could you not know this big creature was looking down at you while you were sleeping. And this kind of adds another piece to the puzzle where, again, being interdimensional, you may not feel it. You're in one dimension, he's in another. So quite interesting that this may even apply to a creature such as Bigfoot.
Yeah, and things are just, we're learning things every day. Something new is being shared with us in one way or another.
Well, and it also makes sense when you think about some of these other creatures that have been reported, like Mothman. That was a big, big deal back years ago. And it's, you think about where did this thing come from, and why not have it be an interdimensional experience? And you found these these things right in the Bible.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah.
yes, these.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's a reality. There are other dimensions. And in fact, what was the one thing I was looking at talking about dimensions? I had a statement I read. Oh, yeah, it's in Corinthians, 2 Corinthians. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. So there's a whole unseen world out there that we don't know about, that after we graduate out of this life and become a spirit, we'll be able to enjoy those too.
Yes, and at least acknowledge that they exist, because I think it's very difficult for a lot of people to acknowledge there's anything other than this reality that we can see and touch and feel. But yet we are being affected by these things. The fact that we don't want to acknowledge them doesn't mean they don't affect us, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like in the book when I talked about some of the other things around the Watchers, you have these things that are called shadow people, and they live in the shadows. They're dark, black, dark, but they're not there to help you. They're there to hurt you. That's why for every one of these creatures that are out there, you have like a guardian angel taking care of you to protect you, and if necessary, they'll have more come to help you all they need. But we're being protected, and we're being guided, too. What a great time to be alive and experience all this.
It really is. I mean, when we came up with the tagline for Supernatural Girls, where the paranormal is normal, I mean, it's really, that's what we're doing, but that's what a lot of other people are doing, too, is making this okay to talk about and allowing people to come and share these experiences. And I'm sure you're very sought after by people who want to talk about the miracles they've experienced or the unseen beings they've experienced. And you give them that level of safety that they can talk to you about this. You understand it. And from an historical perspective, too.
Yeah. And I'll share one more thing with you that just happened last summer. You've heard of the Higgs boson?
Yes, the God particle.
Peter Higgs, yeah. He worked on that for 48 years, since 1964. And there are two teams of them working on it, and they couldn't prove the existence of the subatomic particle, the smallest particle in existence, because when you get to the subatomic particle, which became known as the Higgs boson, that particle is the glue that holds all the elements in the universe together. It's called the God particle, that's why. And what happened is on the Independence Day of last year, the people on those two science teams over in Europe and over in America, they announced that they have proven the existence of the Higgs boson. It was a dynamic thing. And the way they relate that is that completed the standard model of particle physics, but it also is like Isaac Newton. They're now saying it like Isaac Newton set the wheels in motion for the Industrial Revolution. They said that the Peter Higgs boson is going to set in motion a whole another revolution. We don't know what it is yet, but they're thinking it's probably going to involve time travel and black hole travel and all kinds of things like that. So we got a great future ahead.
That's very exciting. I mean, so that we will be able to hopefully experience other galaxies as well as other dimensions through the understanding of this particle.
Yeah, I'm open for it.
Yes. Sign us all up. Sounds like a great adventure.
Yeah, that's why.
And it is important, I think, to keep looking at how to change our paradigms and how to live differently, live more fully. I mean, we've been in a narrow state of being for so long. It's very constrictive, and it would be nice to be able to feel more expansion and acceptance overall.
I kind of like to take the Dr. Spock approach on Star Trek, or something happens.
Spock,
say,
yes.
You say, that's interesting.
Fascinating, Captain.
Yeah.
Robert, can you tell us?
But also, all my research, it's why I've changed when I describe the Bible now, I call the Bible, for me, it's the Book of Secrets.
Oh, I like that.
Because they said in the end times, these things are going to be made known. Well, they're starting to be made known now, so it's exciting.
It is. Helene, you were going to say something?
I was going to ask if he had any excerpts that he could point to about ETs or someone visiting interplanetary.
Like Ezekiel? Yeah. In the Bible, there's a whole book called Ezekiel, and this guy lived up in up north of Babylon, a thing called the Chabar River. When he was up there, he had these visions all the time, and he would see things, and things would happen around him. And so he would describe what he saw or what he experienced. And one of the things that he described was a craft that came from somewhere, who knows where, but this craft, when you read the Bible and you read it in today's understanding, I read that and I said, well, that's a hovercraft. You know, it's one of these Star Trek lift crafts they had on the old Star Wars thing where people sit in and fly along. Well, that's the way it sounds to me, but back then, in the days when that book was being written, the people didn't know what a hovercraft was. They wrote about fiery chariots and fiery horses and all that. But there are some craft out there that we don't know for sure what it all is, but it has to do with the UFOs, and it has to do with extraterrestrials and things like that. For example, even with the space shuttle, I remember watching a video one time. The astronauts are taking a picture out the window of the space shuttle, and they're looking at the space debris going by, and then all of a sudden, here's this thing going the opposite direction of all the debris. And I said, what on earth is that? And they said, okay, watch. And you watch it, and here there's two craft out there, and it's almost like they're shooting at each other. And then they kind of zip off, and they move real quick and move around, and they change angles real fast. Well, that was put on the air. I'm not sure exactly where I saw it, but then it never got onto the media.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to tell anybody about it.
Right.
But so there's something going on out there. I don't know what it is.
Yes, and again, as you mentioned, this was discussed in the Bible.
Yeah.
So
now,
these crafts were not unknown to them.
Was Ezekiel a prophet, or was Ezekiel a prophet, or was he just someone who reported this craft?
I think he was a prophet living up there. It happened several times with him. He was actually taken down to Jerusalem to see how people were living and how really corrupt the society was down there, and warned that they're going to get theirs because they just won't get their act together. But that happened several times to him while he was up there. And so he'd go into a trance, and he'd be just all spaced out for a couple of days before he got back to normal again. So those things were happening to him.
Wow.
And then you got Elisha, and Elijah was a prophet down. He had actually at schools in one of them was in Jericho, and one I think was in Bethel, down by the Jordan River, and he was teaching other prophets how to go into trances so they could see the future and make determination about what's coming up and happening. And he was going to be taken away and taken to heaven without dying. And he was supposed to turn over his robe or cloak to Elisha. And he wasn't sure if Elisha was ready. And Elisha kept bugging him, that I want to go with you. And Elisha's heading down towards the Jordan River. And he goes to the Jordan River, and he takes his cloak, and he smacks the water, and the river parts, and they walk across. And, well, Elisha's walking with him. He says, I want to have as much power and faith as you have. And he says, if you see me taken away, then you will. You'll have twice the power, whatever it is. And so they're walking to get on the other side of the Jordan, they're walking away, and all of a sudden this craft shows up, swoops down and picks up Elisha and takes him off up into the sky, and Elisha is watching Elijah go, and Elijah's cloak falls down on the ground, and Elisha picks it up, and now he's the head prophet. And so this happened, and the people, all the prophet students, whoever they are, apprentices, they knew this was going to happen, but they couldn't come across the Jordan. They had to stay on the east side, the west side of the Jordan, while these other two guys, Elijah and Elisha, walked across the river, then had that experience where Elijah was taken away by some fiery chariot craft, and he was gone, just like that.
And never came back.
Never came back. My question is, where did he go?
Yeah. Where did they take him?
And even Enoch, back in the beginning of time, after Adam, you had a guy named Enoch, and Enoch was about 360 years old, I guess, and he used to talk with God all the time. They were almost like friends. They talk all the time. One day, Enoch is gone, and he never came back.
And that's another thing that's just so strange about how things are written back then. 360 years of age. I mean, that just seems just unbelievable.
Yeah. It wasn't until after the flood. After the flood, people never lived that long. They averaged about 120 years, except for Abraham. He lived 175, but most people lived a little over 100 years. I had a medical doctor, a gal who's a heart surgeon, tell me one time that there's no reason that people can't live to be 140. She said most people die because they think they have to. But she says, theoretically, from a physical standpoint, you could live to be 140. So she says that's what the typical age should be for people.
Wow. So something has changed so that we're not doing that. We're still back.
After the flood, when that canopy went away, then the sun came in and all the solar energy came down, and with all the radiation and everything else, and that affected the health of people, and they didn't live as long.
Okay, that makes sense. Very.
Well, it sounds like if you live up in Seattle, you live longer.
Yeah, with all the cloud cover there. That is the most cloud-covered city in the country, isn't it? Yes.
I was up there 7 times, and every time I went up there, it was always like a little drizzle coming down. And one day I got up at the hotel or a motel, and I opened the drapes, and the sun's out, and here's these beautiful mountains out there. So where did they come from?
Yeah, it is legend, that's for sure, Seattle's cloud-covered sky. Well, another thing in your book that I wanted to get to is end of days. And you have several different interpretations by different people for the end of days. Is there anything that you want to talk about with that in terms of any particular one that you feel is more accurate than the other? Or what is your thought on all of that end of days stuff?
I find it interesting, and I follow it because I think we're approaching the end of time. I think we're heading in that direction. When things happen around the world, a lot of Jewish people get all excited because, this is a sign, this is the end of the time. Well, I'm in discussions right now with a couple of ministers talking about the, what do you call it, the rapture. And I said, in the Bible it talks about Jesus saying about people being there, and then one person is gone, the other one's left. And I said, is that the rapture? And he said, well, no, that's the end times. In the end times, as things happen. I said, well, if God is all-powerful and God is such a good person out there and he's all for us, then why wouldn't he want to take all the people who follow him and get them out of here before all that stuff hits the fan in the rest of the world? And then, so my theory that I'm in discussions with these people on is that could it be that there are 2 raptures? One rapture where all the people who follow the 10 Commandments and do what they're supposed to, at least try, then they will be raptured out of here and be gone and taken up somewhere on a craft or a planet or whatever. And whoever's left, they got to deal with the tribulation period where everybody gets all kinds of pain and suffering and everything else until they get their act together. Then if they get their act together, then they will be raptured out, and they don't have to deal with the final judgment day when everybody gets toasted. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm open.
You're open. Well, and it's interesting, too, because in the book you kind of break it down into, let me just go back to your book here, because I just found this fascinating, where you have, let's see, End of Days by Paul, and then you have End of Days by Jesus. And, everybody has their, in terms of what you found, there's several different interpretations here. They're all very different.
Well, they're all describing the same thing. They're talking about how it's going to end and how really bad it's going to be. Is it going to be a biological? Is it going to be a nuclear? What's going to go on? And the things that I found because of my military background, I look at that and I say, well, the flesh will rot while they're standing on their feet. What on earth is going to go on? It's going to be a nasty time. You don't want to be around then. You want to make sure you're taken away well long before that. Because would they say something about how many days or months it'll take just to bury all the dead? That end time is going to be a nasty, nasty end times.
And there was also some reference in one of them, I believe, to food and being told not to eat certain food. And here we are with the GMOs and the big controversy over that. And I thought, well, that kind of is ringing true about the food issue. It
is, and how everybody's supposed to eat this so-called healthy food, and you'll be fine. then other parts of the Bible say that, well, if God made the food, then it can't be bad for you. So why do you have to do other things? So, like I say, I'm open to anybody who can prove things to me and things different. But yeah, the food issue is like in the schools. You have to eat a certain kind of food. The kids have to eat these things here. Is that really a good step?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's, again, there's just so much around food these days. And this was in End Times Described by Paul that you wrote about. It was just very interesting. Now, the other thing, one of the other chapters that I found interesting, too, was about the third heaven. Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, that was Paul, I think, that talked about that, how somebody went to the third heaven. And they said, reading a little further along, it says that was actually Paul. And Paul said that he went up to heaven, the third heaven. Well, the third heaven, in that interpretation, is where God lived. So he went up and saw God and then came back. So but that again goes to the multiple dimensions. And sometimes they talk about there are 7 levels, and sometimes there's 3 levels, and sometimes there's 10. And I don't know. I'm still open on all that. So, but that's what he was talking about. That third heaven is where God reigns.
And
well, there's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy in heaven where different beings or energies live at different levels, and where human spirit lives is also sort of by levels.
Yeah.
So I don't know if some people would perceive 3 levels or perceive 7 levels or perceive 13 levels, whatever that is, but it does seem to be some division between where you are or where the being is living or coming out of.
And what I like to talk to people about is everybody wants to go to heaven. And some people say, well, I'll never get there because I'm so bad, I've been so nasty and everything else. I said, if you believe, you'll go to heaven. And it doesn't matter if you're the engineer or in the caboose as long as you're on a train.
I love that.
Yeah, I like that too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. Now, do you envision book 2 with this, or taking this in another direction for another book?
Well, right now I am writing a concordance, which is an index of all the verses in the Bible that deal with the supernatural, so I can have a concordance. And then eventually I'll do another edition of the supernatural book. I don't know when, years from now maybe, but there's things that I couldn't put in here simply because there wasn't enough space. I couldn't have that many pages. So the people who were designing the book have been saying, you got to cut it out, you got to cut this out, you can't put that in. I said, well, I need another book then.
Exactly, because it does seem like there is even more material you could get into in a whole new way, and how exciting that would be for the readers. Now, what about, have you gotten any resistance from people in the church or priests or whomever? Anybody give you any?
I haven't gotten any.
This?
When I tell people that I'm just an engineer and just reporting what I found, if it's not right, prove it to me. I'm open. I can understand that and follow that. Just prove it. Don't tell me something without proving it. Like I did a speech at a Rotary Club a couple of weeks ago, and the one guy in there says, well, you're talking about the flood. Have you ever done studies on the 40-year flood at Ephesus? I said, what? He said, Ephesus had a 40-year flood. I said, I don't remember reading that. And I read through the Bible 5 times. And then what I did is I said, would you mind showing me? Because I had a King James version of the Bible right there, and he came up afterwards. He's going through it, and he couldn't find it. And I gave him my card. I said, well, if you do, send me an email because I'd like to learn more about that. But I'm not convinced it's actually there. Yeah. I was going to mention one more thing since we only got a few minutes of it, like dragons.
Yes, go ahead.
When I was doing my research on dragons, and I was trying to find out, were there actually dragons in the Bible and dinosaurs and all that? And I found out that, not only were they there, they were real, but the King James Version has a whole bunch of them. I'm trying to think of where I wrote a note down someplace how many they found. There were a whole bunch of them that the King James Version actually describes in there, like 39 of them or something. And then you go to the newer translations, and they kept taking the word dragon out, and they'd put in other words. And then when we get to the 1995 edition, it doesn't even mention dragon in it at all. So as the people interpreted the Bible and rewrote the Bible, they took out a lot of those little words. And yet in the original Bible, including in the Hebrew, they talked about the dragon well and dragons and things like that. Then so I do my studies, and I find out that over in China, they raised dragons, and they used them to pull carts around. This is way back when. So you look at the zodiac, and it's got a dragon on it. So I'm saying, well, okay, who's real here? Who's really putting out the straight information? Please tell me.
Yes. Yeah, and why is it being sanitized or changed that way? I mean, why not leave the dragon in? If it was in at the beginning, why take it out?
That's right. People would ask me, well, when the ark was filling up, did dinosaurs go on the ark? And I said, I think so. I said dinosaurs existed over in that part of the world the same time the ark was being built. And I said, you could have a little dinosaur come along and go on there, two little ones come on there. I wouldn't have tried to get a great big one on there. It's kind of but that's kind of, it's certainly possible to have dinosaurs on there.
Interesting. Gosh. Yeah, I mean, it's a shame, again, that things get redone, retranslated, or taken out, edited. So then we miss some of the rich history that came before. I think it's great that if there were dragons, that's phenomenal. I mean, we certainly love watching them on some of these shows like King Arthur, and it just seems to be like, why not just leave it in there? I don't understand the mindset when we take out some of these creatures and we just attribute them to myth when they really did exist.
It's kind of like the church not talking about anything supernatural. They just don't want to do it. It's something they want to deal with right now.
And why do you think that is?
I think it's a mindset, because in order to look at the supernatural side of the Bible, you have to admit a lot of things happen that may not what you want.
Mhm. May not fit.
May not fit. Yeah.
Because I think too, if again, is it about power or is it about connection to the spirit? I think that's the bottom line. That's the question we all have to ask.
Well, we're dealing with things today that have to do with control and agendas and stuff like that. And it's not a society where we can be real open yet.
Yeah, and I hope we're heading down a different road so that we can all be open and expansive. And let's hope. Let's hope.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, this has been such a wonderful evening with you, Robert. Just exciting, and again, I love your perspective on all of this. It's very light-filled, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to talk about Scripture this way.
Thank you.
Oops, Robert just.
Hello?
Robert. I just see that on the board that Robert's call got dropped. So.
A shame.
Yeah, I hope he can call back in so we can say goodnight to him. My goodness.
I know it, but everybody needs to run out and pick up his book, Supernatural and Strange Happenings in the Bible. I mean, this has just been a fascinating discussion, and he's a very lively and interesting speaker, so it's been really great.
And he is a great writer. This book is extremely well written, and like I said, it is a page-turner, which I find incredible. When I first got this book, and I started looking at the amount of material here, I was like, oh, my goodness, how am I going to get through all this? And then when I started reading it, I could not put it down. It was just absolutely great to read. Lots of fun, as it is in talking with him. And you see, just like you mentioned, he really puts it out there, without judgment. This is what I found. Here it is. If you think I'm wrong, prove it to me. And I love that kind of an attitude. That's really, it makes it much more, palatable, I think, for everybody and of interest to everybody.
Well, what I like about his book is that you can just read it in small amounts, read it when you want to for fun. Each story is a new one. And so, it's just a great read. It is. It's available on Amazon.com. And also, please go to supernaturalgirls.com and sign up for our newsletter so you can hear about all the latest and greatest in terms of what we're offering, what we're giving away, contests, promotions, all kinds of things. Well, good night to Robert. We're really sorry his call dropped. Maybe his battery died or something. I don't know. We haven't heard from him again. He was calling in from a landline, so I don't know what maybe it was the explosion at your house.
that ricocheted. Took him off the board. I don't know. Has it calmed down over there?
I heard another one, so I'm wondering if it's someone with just some serious firecrackers or something. I don't know. So we'll find out. Oh, strange. But yeah, I don't like those kind of big noises in the night, Patricia, you know?
I understand. I really do. I don't like to hear that kind of thing either. So, well, I hope everybody's safe at your house. And our audience, I hope that you will enjoy the rest of your evening and weekend. And thank you so much for joining us for Supernatural Girls this evening.
It's always fun, Patricia.
It's always fun.
It is.
And the light always wins.
It does. And join us next week. Join us next week as we say good night. Good night, Patricia.
Good night, Helene. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with